Hello, everyone. How you doing? And happy Friday to everyone, and welcome to a safe space between us. As you can see, Kieran is advertised to be on tonight, but he's been doing some fantastic work in the community all day today. So I thought I'll give him the night off, and I'll come and give this hosting gig a go. Tonight we're joined by a very special guest from stateside. He's got a very inspiring story to share, and then also he's doing some great work based from his story. So we're going to get all into that. It's Verum. Hi, Verum. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, glad to be here.
So we'll just go back. It's obviously your story. So just tell us exactly what you want to tell us. Go as deep as you want, and we'll go from there. So just explain to everyone who you are, whereabouts you're from, and just start with your inspiring story.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you. Providing the space for this kind of thing to happen. I'm a firm believer in platforming the unspoken. That's kind of what I aim to do. With my own project. Yeah. I I guess I could just start from the top. Hey. I am a certified peer specialist from the state of Ohio, and that in order to have that role, I must have a background myself, which 5 years in recovery now after 10 years in active addiction. I've been through it all, man. I've seen a lot, and between jails and rehab and you know toxicity, dealing with family problems, you gotta pick yourself up every time and keep moving, or get left in the dust. So that's the short and tight version of my story, anyway. Yeah, we'll start there, I guess.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the 5 years. Well done. Do you want to just explain to people what led you into the path of addiction?
Well, with a background like mine, which abandonment issues, family trauma, it just kind of led me down this inevitable path. I see it as inevitable. I was bound to get there one way or the other. Yeah, so it was trying to fill something that was gone. There was a time when things felt right, and then there was a time that they did not feel right, and I did not know how to sustain this new feeling. But drugs worked. Uh, Getting high, partying, being with friends, excess, material. Those things worked. So that's what I filled it. I filled that hole with whatever I could. Um, Starting off with just like the basic smoking weed, doing some hallucinogens here and there, exploring my, and I justified it as like exploring my mentality, finding answers to questions I'd had for a long time that I felt robbed of because of my dad leaving at such a young age. I had to kind of find my own way. My mother ups and moves to a new area, so whatever father figures I would have had were not around because we were in a completely different state, and it's just having to carve my own path. So I guess a good analogy for that is bushwhacking. Just kind of got the machete and just bushwhacking. Um, but over time, I've tried to turn that into trailblazing, which is a small distinction, I think, but it's an important one. Is knowing the difference between just bushwhacking and just going crazy and hectic versus blazing the trail for those behind me.
Yeah, and when you was younger and you was going through that family trauma and obviously your dad leaving and stuff, did you feel like it was your fault? Because I know a lot of times in breakups and stuff like that, the children feel like it's their fault. Like my mum left me when I was 9. Like we speak now and stuff, but I've gone through my life taking a lot of responsibility, feeling like it was me. I could have stopped it.
Mm-hmm. I think thoughts like that happened where I could have stopped it, but not necessarily my fault. I think I was a smart enough kid to know that it wasn't my fault, but it just didn't really change I still felt guilty somehow, and it was like grown ups around me always saying like, it's not your fault. It's like, well, you're planting that idea into my head, Um, but I never really like blamed myself per se, but I did like I'm aware of moments that things could have been different, but I was a kid, man. I can't make such strong, decisions. I was at their mercy. They're my parents. They're the ones that should be trailblazing and following their lead. But at a certain point, I had to pick it up myself, and I had two younger brothers, so I felt obligated.
Yeah, a lot of pressure and responsibility at a young age. So you said you got into drugs and that. Um, Obviously, you said sometimes it felt like it was helping and stuff. But do you feel like obviously, how deep did it get? Sorry, how deep did it go? Like you started off, as you said, with a bit of weed and stuff. Like, did it get really bad? And when did you know you'd hit rock bottom?
Uh, I think when I started to, I mean, there's like a couple different rock bottoms, but when it really started to get bad, bad, was when late in high school. I don't know exactly the moment, but discovered pain pills, and those were fun just to add to the party. And once I got out of high school, they became more and more available, while other things became less available, and they were cheaper and everything else. So I was just doing what I wanted to, especially after high school. I was just living my life. um However, I remember speaking to people that like other drug addicts, or even my drug dealers, just kind of like in passing and talking to them about certain things. And one thing I feared was withdrawing, because I wasn't withdrawing for the longest time. I was doing pills and just doing whatever I wanted for probably a good year without even withdrawing. Because I wouldn't do them every single day, but I was doing them a lot still. Anyway, it wasn't until I started going from Vicodin to Oxy, and then Oxy every day, and that dreaded day came where I was withdrawing, and it didn't hit me right away, but maybe once I was withdrawing a couple times, it really just kind of sank in, like, oh shit, there's no escaping this.
Yeah, and when did you know like it was time to do something about it? What, was it? Was it like a light bulb moment, or was it over a period of time?
That's a very interesting question. I kind of knew from the beginning I had to get out of it, but I lost self control, and it wasn't really like I didn't really mind. I gave myself a leash. I kind of let myself go so far, and I would like pull myself back. But at some point, that leash ripped, and I was stealing things. I was acting out certain crimes to do what I needed to do to get by, to get high. I mean, once it started like hitting a new level of rock bottom, it really was a light bulb like, hey man, you need to do something about this. But really before I had a chance to do anything about it, like I turn around and I'm in jail, so my that whole journey began. So
And are you okay talking about jail? Like, did
yeah.
did, did the system help you, or was it a worse place to be in, or
uh um Yeah, some places, some are better than others, I guess. I think it did help me in hindsight, looking back. I think it did help me, to be honest. I was really in the thick of it, and went to jail for my first time and experienced what it was like to dry out, and that was real bad.
Yeah.
Um, and the first thing I did when I got out was I went and got high. I couldn't stand it any longer, but I did dry out and hated it. And there was just this nagging voice of like, you need to get better. And notice I used the word nagging because that's what it felt like. Hey man, you need to get better, you need to do something. But it was like the total opposite of how it should be. I should be doing normal everyday adult mature things, and there's a nagging voice of like, hey man, do you want to get high? It was the complete opposite. And yeah, I think in the long run, in hindsight, it did help because the time, it was just time. I needed time.
Yeah, and during that period, like, how did you feel about yourself? Because obviously, you knew that you needed to get out. You had this nagging voice to carry on. Did you lose a lot of self-respect for yourself? And like, did you want to give up? Was you giving up in a way? Was you just going along with whatever had happened to you and was just like, I'm just going to go with this and this is my life now?
Yeah, I went along with it. I think something in the back of my head also was like, I don't know. I kind of trusted myself at the same time that, yeah, I might get in some trouble. Yeah, I might have to deal with a lot of bullshit. But I just, I don't know. I just trusted myself that I was going to be able to get myself out of it. I trusted that I was going to be able to, no matter how deep I got, I was going to be able to dig myself out. And holding that faith, you know, I'm not a Christian man, but faith got me through.
We all need a bit of hope sometimes. What was like the lowest low point for you?
Uh, well, I mean, there was a moment that when I had first gotten in trouble, I I was in a little bit of trouble for a couple years with between probation, and then I got in some trouble again while I was on probation. So just kind of this back and forth stuff. It was always just thieving and getting caught with drugs. It was just between those two things, man, just in and out. And I finally got off probation and out of rehab, and felt like a fresh start was ahead of me. Um, and I mentioned a minute ago my mother had moved to another state, so I lived in California for a good altogether 8 years, and I was like, I'm gone, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go to California, and my mom did it with 3 kids. Surely I can do it. Yeah, but I was a drug addict and had very little money in my pocket, and it didn't last long. Ended up homeless, living anywhere. Uh, Good thing is about 75-80% of the time I was in a hotel. I managed to keep a roof over my head, but there was a good chunk of time where I was living under a bridge. I was living in
Right.
one of those storm drain tunnels, and thank you. Um, that means a lot, man. I've never held back with my story. I've always been transparent. I've always been open about it, and I think that that's tied into the trust that I had with myself. Was like, if you're gonna go through this shit, I mean, I can put myself out there for ridicule and take it because I've already put myself through the ringer.
And at the time, did you feel like you had friends that you could reach out to, or the people you were taking drugs with, were they more fake friends because they was in the same situation as you? Or
A lot of it was situational friends, but there was a couple that were real, and even though we were situational, at the end of the day, uh, there's a few that were real, just few and far between.
and why didn't you feel at the time that you could reach out to someone and say, "Look, I need some help," or did you not realise that? at the time that you needed help? Like, again, like, was you thinking everything was okay because the stuff was working? You felt okay at the time?
I was managing, and I always just assumed that I would get myself out of it, you know. So a little bit of pride, you know, not not caring to reach out to others, you know. If somebody cares enough, they'll see it and they'll reach out. If they're not reaching out, then maybe I don't need the help, you know. Um, Sense of pride, but also just it's the corner I put myself in. You know I I'm a very warm, welcoming, rather bright person at times. When I can be, but when I take this path, I go down it by myself, and I don't take anybody with me. And that pushes a lot of people away, which on one hand makes it easier, but on the other hand makes it harder to get out.
No, exactly. So there's another question. What support did you have for your mental health in prison and after coming out? Was there any support?
I'm sorry, one more time.
So yeah, so someone's just put a question up. So what support did you have for your mental health in prison, and after coming out, was there any support with your mental health?
So this at the beginning, I didn't really have any support at all. It wasn't until I actually started opening those windows, and allowing those avenues. Um, but in the beginning, yeah, no, there wasn't any support. I felt very much alone.
Would you like in prison? Was you offered like support, or did they just leave you to it?
Well, a small little distinction to make also is I never went to prison. I was always just in jail, county
Oh,
jail,
okay.
right? So in prison, those kinds of um, services are available. They do have things like that, but in jail, most people are just there to do some time and get out, or they're waiting to ride out to prison or whatever. They don't have shit like that. Um, Probation helped, but I was very what's the word? I was very flippant. I didn't care. I don't know. I had this arrogance about me. Um, I was looking up to the wrong people. I don't even want to say looking up, but like the acquaintances that I had made were getting by doing certain things, and I didn't value myself enough to be above those things, right? So I did what I had to do to get by, and I modeled that after the people that I would encounter. Well, they're getting by. He's been doing this for years. So if I just kind of do what he's doing. And so when other people would provide help, it was like, no, because that's not in my model of how to get better. Um, I don't know. It's been a long path, and it's been a journey, but it's been one that to a certain degree I knew what was going on. I just didn't have the strength or the will to get myself out of it. I allowed it to happen. And that's just, I mean, we can debate about whether it's a disease or not, and we don't need to have that debate, because the argument to that debate is that it's a choice, right? Uh, I can see both sides, how both sides can be true. And because of my disease, it made it easier to make the choice to give up. you know, uh, so that's where that came into play. But yeah.
So you said earlier on it was about turning into a trailblazer. So what are you doing now? What's your project you do now and the work you're doing?
Well, one way that I found out of it was what I do now is I'm a certified peer specialist.
Yeah.
So I help others that are struggling in the same way, and that helps me in my own recovery. That is one, major kind of opportunity that changed things for me, and that's what I'm doing to kind of give back. But then there is this creative draw that's always been in me. I have my own podcast. I have a number of creative projects and endeavors that I'm working on right now. Excuse me. And aim to give back through that channel as well.
And how do you sort of self care? Because obviously there's going to be days where you wake up and something's gone bad or something, so it's easy to go back down that route. So what do you do now instead? Because obviously, like with people smokers, I hate the term I'm a non-smoker or I'm a non-drinker. I see it with addiction is you're a smoker who chooses not to smoke, or you're a drinker who chooses not to drink, or you're a drug taker that chooses not to take drugs.
Right.
So I think once it's in you, it's in you. So how do you get by on that if you wake up and you're really craving to head back down that route? How do you self care?
Reflection, really. That's the number one answer, because that can come in different flavors. One is meditation, right? Uh, one is taking inventory. Um,
Yeah, so I'm just looking at that as well.
right. No, I agree. I think, yeah, that's kind of the angle that I was saying, that is my disease makes it easier to say no or yes. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I reflect. I remember where I came from. I don't ever allow myself to get too big for my britches, you know? I have this I, what's funny is that I have a much stronger will than I used to, which, my will was very weak, but now it's not. I mean, it's not like super strong or anything, but it's so much stronger. And it's funny to me that it was ever that weak, because I have this power to compartmentalize, and I'm very good at doing it. I'm also working like a side job in sales right now, and you have to be able to compartmentalize to work sales, because it doesn't matter what shit you're going through, you got to have a positive personality to make a sale. So you have to be able to compartmentalize, and that's what I've done. The best kind of analogy that I have is like, if a kid wants a Mountain Dew out of the fridge and you say no, and it's right there in the fridge, as soon as you go to the other room, they're gonna go in there and they're gonna take it.
Exactly.
Should it come to that, they'll just go in there and take it. But if you take that Mountain Dew and you put it on top of the fridge, right? Eventually they're not going to be able to access it. I mean, they might get resourceful and they might climb the counter, but they can't reach it, so they'll just forget about it. And for me, I don't have the energy to put in the effort to climb the counter and go up there and get it anymore. I've put it so far up and out of reach that anytime it seems appealing at all to me, I'm just like, I don't even have the effort to climb the counter. I just, like, I don't have it in me. Um, However, you have to be prepared for the time that it does get strong enough, and that's why I regularly work on my meditation, and I could use there's a lot of room for growth there. I don't meditate as much as I'd like to, but at this point, I got it down to at least a couple times a week, and it really does help.
Yeah, other than the meditation, because one of our members kind of asked, what tools help you get through your dark days? So obviously you said meditation. Do you do like exercise, or is there anything else?
Well, exercise is something I got on the list. Yeah, it's going to be. I'm gonna be implementing that in as well. Um, I've never been much of an exercise guy, but but I really need it. Just, I mean, I'm getting to my mid 30s, man. I got to start taking health seriously, you know. But it really comes down to, we can go back and forth about exercising or meditation or medication or journaling or whichever. We can go back and forth and say XYZ. I get to the core of things and I say, what am I really doing with any of these aspects? I'm
Yeah,
distracting myself long enough for me to surpass that moment, and I am reality checking myself in the process. So I'm distracting myself with some form of reality check, right? And by reality check, I mean like putting myself in the moment, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, just looking at myself in the moment. And that's what I mean by reality check. So XYZ, you can exercise, you can't, because I can give you all the tips in the world, man, but your path is your path and your interests are your interests. I'll still share what works for me because sometimes people are like, well, what does that guy do specifically? And honestly, and I'm here to be honest, is I don't do enough. I mean, I do things and I have a lot that I do, but I don't do enough because I can always do better. Um, so I guess I have a rather realist kind of perspective about it.
well, I
But
think that goes back to your reflection as well, that you know within yourself there's more you can do. So you're being on it, and I think that's the best thing all the way through is just be honest with yourself the whole time.
yeah,
So I think if someone's either in addiction now or thinking about they need help, what what advice would you give as the first step to try and break that cycle? Is it to reach out to someone? Is it to like listen to stuff like what we're doing?
uh, I kind of like what you just said, man. Be honest with yourself. Um, that's a great starting point because most of us aren't going to get anywhere if we keep lying to ourselves because that's what keeps us going. You know, is the lie or the justification or the validation or whatever. It's all the same thing. It's all a version of deceit, and you're deceiving yourself. So be honest with yourself. That's first and foremost. If you're in the depths of addiction or excess of any kind, first of all, be honest with yourself. And secondly, one of my favorite little kind of mantras is that consistency combats chaos.
No, that's good.
You know, consistency combats it because yes, order might be the antithesis, right? It might be the opposite of chaos, but consistency is what combats it. That's how you get through it. That's how you bring order into check, is with consistency. So even if you're taking small steps, I recommend it because taking big steps, you're going to trip yourself up.
Exactly.
Um, and people are like, don't overgeneralize. No, I'm serious. Big steps are going to trip you. They are going to trip yourself up. Um, I get a lot of pushback sometimes, where it's like, yeah, but no, like sometimes you got to overgeneralize because it's the truth. You take big steps, it will trip yourself up. Take baby steps and work yourself up.
No, that's strange because I had a conversation with someone once. We got into it was to do with work. I work in education, and we was talking about how we're going to get a young person to the end of something, and we was having a back and forth argument because my expectations were a lot higher than what we could put on that young person. And the way he drew it on the board, like Finny said, right, we both want to get this young person to X. Here's a ladder. Your runs are a massive gap in between each run, where my runs are smaller gaps. We're still getting to the same point, but you're not going to reach it because you can't reach the next gap because you've left a big gap between one run of the ladder and the next run of the ladder. He said, where with my ladder, there's 5 or 6 runs in between the gap that you've left, and it still gets us to the same point. And since that day, it's kind of sort of thing you've just said. It's about like lowering the expectations. You put too much pressure on yourself or too much expectation on yourself, you are going to trip up. But like you said, if you just take small steps, you'll still get there. So I think it's a really good piece of advice.
I mean, there's a time and a place. You know, another strong perspective about it is that there's no one thing that I can give you, except for maybe this statement, that is going to be true through and through, because it's all things in moderation. All things in moderation. And what I mean by that is there's going to be times for big steps. There's going to be times for baby steps. And baby steps are the safe bet. You know, they're the safe bet to get you through from A to B. But eventually you're going to need to get from A to D, A to Z, and you're going to need to take bigger steps. So, you know, the real test is knowing the difference, knowing when you need to take baby steps, knowing when to slow down, man, take it easy, you know, and knowing when you got to speed it up, and knowing when you got to take bigger moves. And by bigger moves, I mean, sometimes you got to jump. You got to go from one field to the next. Had I not ever taken that chance to become a peer specialist, none of this would have, this whole side quest of my life would have just never happened. You got to know when to take those big jumps, you know. So,
and
moderation.
Sorry, just a couple of things that keep coming through. So someone's put small steps, achievable targets for yourself are key. No need to compare to others, in my view. And a lot of people have been talking about the beard, saying it suits you. And
I appreciate it.
How long does it take you to grow the beard?
Do what?
How long has it taken you to grow? How long have you been growing the beard for?
I'll add a little bit more depth to it. It's long, man. It's almost 5 years actually, which is crazy to me even. Yeah, because it was about a year after I got clean. So I've been clean 5.5 going on 6, and it's been growing 4.5 going on 5.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I finally reached a point where like I needed to start trimming it. Really, it just came out of laziness. I don't want to shave. Shaving sucks. So to all the women out there, I feel your plight. Shaving your legs, shaving your armpits, doing all the whole thing. Yeah, man, I feel you there. So
I get 3 weeks and I have to shave. I get too itchy and I need to shave it off. Kai put seeing 2 men talk about mental health is just amazing. Well done, you two. So that's another thing. Do you feel like having platforms like your platform and this platform and that is key to helping? Like we're on a mission here to break the stigma, break the silence around mental health. Like you said earlier on, you're on a mission with your projects to break down. Do you think having these conversations is a key to doing this?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, we're opening dialogue here. Dialogue that has been ignored. You know, talked about, and you know, it's not always been straight up ignored. There's always been some conversation about it. It's just been behind closed doors. You know, the only time you could talk to another man like this is if he was your kin. You know, and therefore, you know, the talks have always been had. It's just always been behind closed doors and secret and just not openly, right? So we're opening the dialogue in a big way, and that is important because, like, you know, opening the doors of perception. You know, let's go Jim Morrison with it. You know, you're going to open the doors to perception, which even that was a quote of somebody else, but whatever. The more doors we open, the more perspective we have. The more perspective we have, the bigger we understand the picture, you know, the bigger picture we understand anyway. So it is very important.
Someone put the doors have to be open wide and conversation has to flow both ways. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. What's for you guys out in the States, what's mental health awareness like from like your government and education system and stuff?
Shite.
Yeah, same here in the UK.
Pure utter shite. It's just, man, our country's fucked. Point blank, period. Our country's fucked. It's not just mental health, man. It's health in general. It's insurance companies run everything. They run everything, and you got to have good insurance to get good care. And it's so hard. So, as far as the awareness goes, I think it's getting a lot better, and I think that it's the grassroots sort of projects, man. It's this, like, podcasts are the way to the future. This is how we're going to stay connected, and on one hand that's good, but on the other hand, the fact that it's digital and that the people that run the satellites and stuff can just turn them off is a scary thing. But this is the way to the future. This is the way to opening these doors and understanding one another. There's a will, there's a way. That's just one of the slogans that I have over on my podcast. I say it all the time. There's a will, there's a way, period.
And if people want to listen or see your podcast, where can they find you?
Well, Twitch mainly. Twitch.tv/Visand. It's VI. Can I type in this?
Yeah, or if you send it over, try and type. If not, send it over and we'll post it.
Okay.
In the comments.
Twitch.tv/Visand, VISAND. I have a Kick account as well, which is the Twitch opponent that just you know about Kick.com. It's a website like Twitch. So I have an account on both of those. I stream twice a week, Thursday and Sunday. Thursday evenings EST, Sunday noon EST. Sunday noonish. It's actually 1 p.m. we start. Anyway, we're working on getting that edited and reposted to YouTube. So it's a process. We're growing. It's a new community that I'm building, and we're kind of building it from scratch, and we're still in the beginning stages. So yeah, feel free to come by. Anybody listening, we could definitely use the love. Visand.tv, you'll see the live stream. I said that backwards. Twitch.tv/Visand. You'll see the live stream, and the podcast officially will be reposted. That's kind of how it's working. Is like we broadcast it live and then repost it. But we're looking to do different shows. Right now, the show that we're doing is The Odd I See, which is it's a show very similar to this, where I have guests come on that, we do interviews and we share perspective and just kind of dig deep. But we're aiming to kind of do other shows where it's like The Odd I See, instead of being twice a week, will be like, bi-weekly, so that we can get other shows in there as well. Like it's just that, the live streams would just be the channel that we're kind of doing multiple shows on. So that's kind of like, the aim, the target we're aiming at. But for now, it's just the one show. Come check it out. And we have the blog, which is vagabard.blogspot.com. So.
Yeah, but as I said, if you send the links over, we'll get it up in the comments below this video when it keeps me showing on Facebook and stuff. I'd definitely love to come and support. As someone from our team's put, we'd definitely be happy to come on your channel and help. We can just let us know how to. So yeah, we'll definitely stay connected with us and the team, and we'll definitely do that. Just before we wrap up, just one final question.
What's up?
Well, not question really, just I'm going to pass the last thought over to you. So anything you want to share with anyone about mental health and anything, the floor is yours.
Oh, man. just take your time, do it on your time, and you know that's like really all I can say, because I work in this field, and it's something I say regularly is, because I work in recovery, so whether you're there as a client for me, or you're seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, XYZ, whatever, this is your mental health. At the end of the day, you can hear what I got to say, you can hear what your doctor's got to say, but it's something that is different than physical health. If you go see a doctor and they're like, you broke your arm, here's what we're going to do about it. Okay. Doctors know what they talk about, but at the end of the day, it's your mental health. It's different than physical health in that way that you make decisions on how you're going to. You are the the physician of it. You know what I mean? You're the like there is no surgeon. You are the surgeon. You're the one, making the big decisions of your life. So when I say do it on your time, I mean that, because the only way you're going to get better is comfortably. Which is a funny thing to say, because growth only happens in the uncomfortable situations, really. But you got to be comfortable to move forward. Like when you force it, you're bringing it with a false pretense. You're bringing it with an air of negativity. And if you want to be the most successful, you got to do it on your time. You got to be ready, man.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time this evening over here in afternoon for you. It's been a real pleasurable conversation, and please defo stay in touch, and you're more than welcome back on any time you want.
By all means, you're welcome. We'll get you booked on our show sometime as well, and I'm happy to open up a channel of communication with you guys. We strength in numbers, right? That's what it's about.
Exactly. If we all pull together, we can all do it together. We can break the stigma and break the silence.
Yeah, and that's like a huge thing that the Vagabond community is about. It's about mental health awareness, of course, but it's also about self-expression. Yep. And we get to those two things by pulling each other up,
Exactly.
Pulling each other up. And that's how, because we're all in this together. We all have very similar situations with the stigma. So, the odds are stacked against us, and that's why I always end my shows with the odds are with you. So.
Okay, well done. Well, thank you. Someone's just put up fantastic podcast tonight. Well done. So thank you so much for a brilliant conversation. And I think, we'll end there. What's your saying? The odds are with you.
The odds are with you.
The odds are with you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
All righty.